Some called it goofer's dust. Others whispered graveyard dirt. You carried it in your left shoe, sprinkled it at your doorstep, or blew it in the wind to return the harm sent your way. Used wrong, it could ruin a man. Used right, it could save your life. But remember, what you send always circles back.
Before 1803, Louisiana's slavery wasn't American. It was French. Follow for the stories they buried beneath the sugarcane. In 1724, France passed the Code Noir, Black Code, to control enslaved Africans in Louisiana. But it wasn't just brutality, it was law. It dictated where they lived, what they wore, even how they worshipped. Catholic baptism was mandatory. Families, rarely respected. Any slave caught running away faced mutilation or death. Yet Louisiana's system was different. Africans and Creoles intermarried. Some gained freedom and built wealth. Yes, there was a black upper class in 18th century New Orleans. That didn't mean equality, but it wasn't the Deep South yet either. Then came 1803, the Louisiana Purchase. American settlers brought their own brutal system, and everything changed. Do you think America made slavery worse in Louisiana? Why do we rarely hear about the French side of slavery? Did you know about the Code Noir? Yes or no? This is just the beginning. In Part 2, we'll explore the sugar plantations of the river parishes, where death rates. Ever heard about the Louisiana massacre that violently reversed Black progress overnight? Hit follow. This story deserves your attention. September 28, 1868, Opelousas, Louisiana. Reconstruction was underway, African Americans finally voting, holding office, and shaping their future. But white supremacists saw this Black empowerment as a threat. Tensions exploded when rumors spread that Black citizens planned an uprising. In reality, these rumors were a calculated lie meant to justify violence. White mobs formed swiftly, brutally attacking and murdering Black residents, including community leaders, teachers, and voters. This was the Opelousas Massacre. Estimates say around 200 African Americans lost their lives, though some historians suggest the number could be higher. Have you ever wondered how this dark chapter shaped Louisiana today? The massacre achieved exactly what its orchestrators intended, terrorizing the Black community, crushing their newfound political power, and reversing Reconstruction-era gains. Why do you think events like these are often overlooked in American history? Yes or no? Should Opelousas publicly acknowledge this tragedy today? It's essential we remember this devastating moment, not just to honor those lost, but to understand how deeply past injustices shape our present. Tell us what you think. Should Louisiana openly reckon with the Opelousas Massacre? Comment below, follow for more hidden history, and share this story to shine light on truths long kept in darkness.
Don't let that white dress fool you. Mama wore a veil and kept High John root in her purse.
Greetings and salutations, honor and respect, honor and respect, honor and respect. It is another edition of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes, powered by, produced, promoted, and sponsored by NOIVD, New Orleans International Voodoo Day. Becoming part of something extraordinary. New Orleans International Voodoo Day is not just an event. It is a moment that celebrates culture, fosters education, and connects people from around the globe. By sponsoring this event, you're supporting a tax-deductible cause that preserves heritage, uplifts art and education, and fosters healing within the community and beyond. Your sponsorship goes beyond promoting your business. It demonstrates your commitment to cultural preservation and education while supporting a unique event that brings international recognition to New Orleans. Events like symposiums, art exhibitions, sacred processions, and global speakers offer unparalleled opportunities to honor history and inspire a brighter future. Supporting an event like this means empowering a community, enriching cultural understanding, and making a meaningful impact on the world. It connects your brand to a celebration that values unity, diversity, and progress while helping preserve traditions for generations to come. Join us in creating a legacy explore our sponsorship tiers, and help us make New Orleans International Voodoo Day an unforgettable celebration. Together, we can uplift a community and inspire the world. And we're certainly grateful and appreciative for those of you who continue to show up for this weeknight, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time podcast. Greetings, Nina Lloyd. Thank you so much, Esperee. Greetings, Ray Alexander. And all of those who are listening right now out in social media. We certainly do appreciate you. I will unmute Sister Toni Val Martinez, Elder Reggie, Green Soap, and Tyson Horn momentarily. Now, while it would be easy to dismiss such parallels between African and European traditions as coincidence, and to see their interaction as something that happened inadvertently or as a result of living in close quarters, the truth of the matter is that people were well aware of folk religious practices and the equivalence of African traditions with European. European charms and supernatural worldviews ensured that African traditions would survive, as white folks were often clients of Black conjurers and even participated in particular voodoo religious rituals alongside Blacks. Black conjure culture also influenced white supernaturalism, the white slaveholders often taking an interest in magical religious practices as a means to which to create an atmosphere of power for themselves, and in turn foster greater obedience on the part of their captives. European folk religion served both to preserve and to alter African magical religious practices through exchange and influence, while outwardly doing everything possible to suppress traditional African religious practices. European elements were simultaneously absorbed into many folk religious traditions of African slaves. The relationship between whites and blacks in terms of conjure was not always antagonistic, of course, in that blacks often turned to white conjurers for support and vice versa. While the syncretism between European and African folk traditions is obvious, the transformation of the traditions of both into a more Americanized hybrid of beliefs known as Hoodoo and Conjure is one that took place as a result of the international teaching of folk religious traditions. I'm sorry, let me say that again, y'all. While the synchronism between European and African folk tradition is obvious, the transformation of the traditions of both into a more Americanized hybrid of beliefs known as Hoodoo Conjure is one that took place as a result of intentional teaching of folk religious traditions of one group to the other. Whites would often practice European style conjure in order to learn more about Africa magical practices. And blacks who visited, please mute up. That's really distracting. Um, oh wow. Through observation and conversation, ideas were transmitted about supernatural beliefs common to both African and European traditions. The supernatural elements of folk religion in Europe, that is, the ones not rooted in Christianity, also influenced the folk religious beliefs of Blacks in the 18th century. Horseshoes and rabbit's feet were seen as tools of protection against malevolent conjurers. Horseshoes protected one's home from being entered by witches, and rabbit's feet was seen as protection from bodily afflictions like cramps and arthritis. Evil charms were also present in folk religious traditions. The conjure bottle or witch bottle in European tradition was a glass bottle filled with spiritual items believed to have the power to harm. These bottles were especially prevalent in areas such as Virginia, which were settled largely by the English. Other elements of European origin evident in hoodoo conjure are the use of candles in altars built to please spirits, the use of brooms in conjure ceremonies, and the use of salt for protection against malevolent charms. Blacks and whites interacted with one another closely during the colonial period, as slaves who worked in a domestic capacity often lived with their captors, making the incorporation of many folk magical practices of whites with those of blacks relatively easy. People of mixed race identity were also taught certain practices by their European and African parents. Some of the most prevalent instances of African and European exchange in spiritual practices are those of Southern American customs concerning death and mourning. The traditional practice of covering mirrors and stopping clocks, often practiced by Africans in both antebellum and modern times, grows out of European customs. Mirrors are covered or turned towards a wall due to the belief that a mirror can be infected if it reflected the image of a corpse and would never reflect things clearly again. This stems from the medieval European belief that someone looking into a mirror immediately after a person died would see the deceased looking over their shoulder. Clocks were stopped at the moment of death due to the notion that they would chime 13 times upon the next hour, which was considered bad luck, stemming from the European belief that clocks left ticking after someone's death would run down so badly that they would never keep the time correctly again. The interplay in religious custom was not solely from European to African. Mourning and burial rituals demonstrate the influence that blacks often had upon whites in early America. Funerals served as important rites to the reverence of dead ancestors in traditional West African religions. Since the ancestors were often feared as well as revered, proper burial customs was seen as essential to the appeasement of any anger that the deceased may have still harbored, thus giving the dead no reason to linger among the living. Early practice of funerary rites among Africans in colonial America were a far cry from the somber ceremonies of their often Puritan Christian neighbors. Funeral ceremonies were emotional and often euphoric in style, as death was seen as a cause for celebration since the deceased had returned home to the ancestors in Africa. This conception of death and funerals as important rites of passage passed to European Americans, and by the 18th century, white Christians in the South had adopted more emotional mourning rituals and a concept of death as a joyous occasion in which one returned home in the hereafter. It is noted that funeral rituals for black slaves as well as white slaveholders were often instances in which racial tensions would relax in shared mourning and celebration of the deceased. And many of you are familiar with the second line traditions here in New Orleans, which is a euphoric and joyous occasion to celebrate the crossing over of those who are transitioned, but also to celebrate and give praise and celebration to the lives lived by those who we are honoring and acknowledging. And again, I want to thank everyone for being present. I want to reintroduce my co-host. Greetings and salutations, Elder Reggie. We know here as Green Soap. My godson, Tyson Horn, is with us again tonight, and also Sister Toni Val Martinez. Please do come on in. All is blessed.
Good evening, everyone out
Good.
there in the listening audience. Hello, how is everyone? Oh my goodness, we have so many rituals surrounding death. I was told you should cry when a baby's born and laugh and celebrate when someone dies. To keep up with all the rituals we have for passing, like the mirrors, turning the mirrors around. I was always told that it was, but this coming from a period when people were laid in state inside their homes and not in churches and not in funeral homes, but their own home where they lived at. And they laid in state unembalmed for a few days. And the spirit of that person who usually died at home could get trapped in a mirror. So you turned the mirror around so that couldn't happen. And of course, we have our second line celebrations here that I have seen people work up into such a frenzy about that they actually dance on the coffin.
Mhm.
They actually dance on the coffin of the deceased person. They are so worked up in a frenzy. But to keep up with all the rituals we have is very hard. So what I did is settle on a few of them that I could remember to constantly do them.
Mhm.
Like at the funeral, at the burial site of someone, you make a slash in the air to cut the cord from them being in the land of the living and the land of the deceased. That's the finest, like cutting an umbilical cord. I don't think too many people still do that. I know some real old stuff from my mama, just like the mirror. But what say you, Elder Reggie? What rituals do you keep surrounding the deceased?
You have to
Elder
unmute Elder Reggie.
Elder Reggie, you on mute? What
Mute.
say you?
I got it. I got it now. Thank you, Sister Toni, for the invite. Appreciate you, Divine Prince, for the show and all that we do. It's Brother Horn. Good
Yeah.
to see you tonight and everyone in the collective chat.
All right.
For me, I was listening and I partake in all of those things that you mentioned. But as Divine Prince opened up with some of the amalgamation of Europeans, African, indigenous people coming together and working what we call hoodoo conjure culture. What came to my mind because I got involved with it in the 90s, and it's called the term seance, but it's translated to mean session de spirit miso. I always heard them call it, let's go to a misa in Spanish.
Mhm.
European. It refers to a spiritual meeting, a session where individuals may communicate with the deceased or engage in rituals. In a broader context, it can also refer to any gathering or meeting, but in the context of spiritism, it specifically denotes a session focused on spiritual practice and communication with the afterlife. And I bring that up because I kind of do something similar daily, even though I pour libations to the ancestors, but that is a form of communication because I bring in specific names and I'm believing they're hearing me. And also, I believe I hear them through prayers. So I would say that's what I wanted to add to the conversation.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I know that's the case. I have a seance with my mom at least 3 times a week. I'm talking to her about, do she believe something ridiculous is going on? I'm talking to her just like I'm talking to you. And actually, I get
Mhm.
that from her because she would actually talk to Jesus in our house when she was shucking corn or cleaning greens. And if I would walk into the room, I would look to see which way she was facing when she was talking to Jesus because I didn't
Mhm.
want to go sit on him as a child. I actually thought I could go and sit on him because to us, he was there. I just couldn't see him and she could.
Mm.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
so I talk to her a lot. I get that from her to ask her to impart her wisdom to me or to show me a sign or something I'm thinking on or something I need to know.
Yes.
Brother
Well said.
Joshua.
Mhm.
Joshua's not here. That's
Brother
Tyson
Oh,
Horn.
Horn.
okay. I thought that was him. Oh, that's Mr. Horn that's in. How are
Hmm.
you?
How you doing, everybody? Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Yeah.
I hear you fine. What are your
Okay.
thoughts on the rituals for the deceased?
Well, you know, as someone that is, you know, experienced a lot and seen a lot, I'm it's interesting to me. The one thought that I had in when you're all talking is I'm wondering like how much of these old practices that are lost with with newer generations, if you would, that don't experience like some of the things that y'all have spoken about. I have experienced a little bit, but not as much. I haven't, haven't heard all the different things like don't do this or don't do that. But I'm wondering like um if those practices, like for instance, turning the mirrors around and things like that, if they're not done, how does that affect a household? Like for instance, when my mother passed away, I was with her when she passed, and we were in the room and everything, but we didn't do anything to change things up. And I really didn't know how to dress the room at the time or to function in with the home at the time. Like is there something I should have done? Or you know I, I know that usually when you're saging and you're cleaning out a room, those are the clean out spirits. And I was like, well, I didn't want to do something that was going to push my mom along if she was still hanging out or something like that. So I just, I wonder if y'all could give me a little insight as to what do you do if someone dies in your home, like that type of thing.
Well, I was with my mother in our home when she died.
Hmm.
I was holding her hand,
Same
and when
here.
she died, and from what I know, no one had died in our family. It was just me, my adopted mother, and father in the household. But through talking with her, when I realized she was gone, I immediately grabbed a sheet and threw it over the mirror, not really more of a reflex because I was told that's what you do when somebody died.
Hmm.
But I only did it in the room that she died in, not every room of the house. I
Okay.
was 12 years old. I was like, I guess, kind of working like a robot. And I don't know anybody who had someone die in their home that didn't do it and they said things were different or stuff was happening weird in their house or whatever. But I know it's a lot of traditions that we did that are not being followed by the younger generations. For instance, with a funeral passes you and you're on the street, we had to turn our back or look down. To this day, I do not look at a hearse. And I
Mhm.
done got fooled a couple of times because hearses have changed. And I mean, I just panicked when I realized I was looking at a hearse. You did not look at a hearse. Men would take their hats off and bow their head. I
Mhm.
have seen nobody do that. You didn't cross a funeral procession in a car, cut in front of them, get in between them. I see people do that all the time now. Also, we would make the sign of the cross passing a church or graveyard. And I've been sitting on the bus and I looked around because I used to do it, but I stopped.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And
Hmm.
I looked around to see if anybody else was doing it, and nobody else on the bus was doing it. And I was like, that gave me something to think about because I grew up, it was such a reflex that I had to literally think about making myself stop doing it.
Hmm.
And I
Mhm.
stopped doing it because I fell out of faith with religion, Catholicism.
Hmm.
And it wasn't any church you passed, it was just Catholic churches and cemeteries. And those practices aren't even being carried on by the next generations. I see no one doing that. I see no one having respect for the dead when they're going on their way to the funeral and all of that. So,
Hmm.
no, they're not following those traditions.
And I wonder because Divine Prince, you teach that our immediate family are our first line of defense when it comes to the spiritual protection and so forth. With, you know, and as with things like the ancestral altars and so forth. You know, talk a little bit more about that.
God speaks in a soft, still voice, requiring us to be still, to be quiet, to be meditative. Sometimes to take acts of ritual prayer and spiritual application and still might not necessarily hear. But our ancestors, which science has now demonstrated, ancestral memory survives in the blood, at least 11 generations. So my feeling is that, you know, the absence of these rites, these rituals, these actions could also sort of mirror the upheaval and chaos that now exists within the family, within the community. To quote the magical books, fathers against sons, mothers against daughters. And we see an imbalance now in society, a lack of respect for children, a lack of respect for old people. So the act of ancestral work and acknowledgement is not only about acknowledging those people you know and those close family relatives and showing them honor, particularly when there's trauma in the family, abuse in the family, but bringing peace and balance between the polarities. We walk in intermixed in more than one world, interdimensionally, if you will. And so to acknowledge what has gone before, what has already been laid down, to acknowledge those shoulders that we stand on, only supports and fuels our goals moving into the future. So we still, in my house, and certainly in many houses within the ATR tradition, keep sacred space for the dead and for ancestors within the confines of our personal space.
I see. I would like to add, can I piggyback on what Sister Toni was bringing up? In this dealing, this how it used to be. They used to do wakes, then funeral. Wakes could be held at a church or it could be held in your home. But when a person died, one, they stopped the clocks. Two, they turned down all pictures with the deceased and a living person. Say if it's my mother and me on a picture, and my mother dies at the house, then I have to take that picture and put it face down because they said in threes. This is what they used to teach, that dead come in threes.
Yes.
And the ones who just departed sometimes looking to bring loved ones on the other side with them. And so one way you separate that is you put that picture down with that deceased person now and that living person. And the third thing you had to do, you had to mop. You had to mop with bleach, pine sorrel, ammonia. You had to mop that house out. But you mop after the wake was over. Yeah. And
Is
so
that
Yeah,
I
is
you
that
had to clean the house out when a deceased body was in the house. I know that you had to open all the windows
yes.
and you had to mop with ammonia in our house. It was ammonia, never anything else but ammonia. And the
Yeah.
cinnamon and the sugar, you had to mop with that and leave all the doors and the windows open and pray. And if you were burning any incense rocks, I never saw any incense sticks like we have today. I didn't see them till I was much older and started looking for them. It was always the little rocks on the charcoal, the
Yeah.
frankincense and myrrh, and smoke your house out with it. The sage and smoke your house out with it. Yes, you definitely had to clean the house out after
Yeah.
someone was
And, and,
there.
one, and one last thing I like to add, you had to put something black on the outside of your house, like on the door or the windowsill, because your particular house was in mourning. And when people just walk down the block, it might be a wake going on, but once again, just like with the headlight was the cars, people would respect that house because they knew that house was in mourning. Those were some of the things that was done in the 60s. A
Yeah.
lot of those
And
traditions are just going away now.
Is that and that goes to hear you speak on that, Elder Reggie.
Mhm.
Does that go to why you would not put anybody living on an ancestral altar?
Correct.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
Yes.
Even
Yes.
when we witness the ancestral masquerades in West Africa, which are really easy to pull up in YouTube,
Mhm.
Egungun, Galede, and you see usually the women, the kids, and even some of the grown men running from the Egun
Mhm.
because they understand that these spirits, these demonstrations walk between the worlds, in between the dimensional spaces, and the fear is that they can capture you. The dead can then capture the spirit or the soul of the living, and then take you back with them. I think that
Mhm.
belief is also attached to what Sister Toni Val was talking about, turning down pictures of mixed pictures of the living and the dead in the same photograph. So
Mhm.
back to the shrine, Tyson. Yeah, we
Mhm.
absolutely don't put living people on or really near your ancestral shrine, which is dedicated to the dead.
Mhm.
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 Yes. I know I have a shrine, a ancestral shrine, a dedicated area in my house, and I know my youngest daughter has one in her house where she has my grandson's ashes. I have some of my grandson's ashes on my altar too behind his picture, but she really, our family, even though it's big, we have not experienced much death. I mean, like for years. I mean, until my grandson was killed, and she really took it hard, and she has made boxes and all kind of stuff in honor of him on
Mhm.
her. She's beginning her ancestor altar with him because that's the only person in her life that has, crossed over.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, I must say that with the with the implication of or the assembly of an ancestor altar, um, ever since I have been doing this, and communing with the ancestor altar, it has allowed me to really connect back just on an emotional level with my immediate relatives, because I see the photographs and I'm consciously maintaining and adhering to it, so it kind of keeps them fresh on my brain, and also what they taught and what they live for stays fresh in my mind and conscious. And so I would say that to honor our past relatives and our ancestors is definitely, I see a great importance in that, and I think that that's one of the best things that I have learned so far from Divine Prince is just that reverence and knowing how to honor them in that way.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
And I would like to remind everyone, especially Dud, that is often the dead or ancestors that we do not know that are strongest in our protection and our defense. We have thousands upon thousands of people on the other side generationally going back to the mother continent. And today, in a society where, again, families are uh, disheveled and broken, people don't know their dad, they don't know the whole side, dad side of the family, they don't know the mom, they don't know the mom's whole side of the family. But those memories still exist within the contents of your blood. So
Yes.
often, particularly when we're experiencing problematic events in our lives, they most certainly can be fueled as well as fixed and protected by those who have passed on, who we acknowledge and allow for intervention.
Mhm.
Yes. I had an incident when I had my middle daughter, and my father had been dead for years, and he would smoke a cherry tobacco in his pipe. And our curtains, everything smelled like cherry in our house, which it was pleasant because it was a pleasant smell. But anyone who came to my house during his lifetime, they all associated that smell with our house and him. When I had my middle daughter, I smelled it in the house by her crib when I brought her home from the hospital. And I had a girlfriend who knew my father, knew the smell, and she knew he had been dead for a long time. The minute she walked in the door, she hollered, "Oh man, it smelled just like Pawpaw in here." So it was like my dad had came to see my daughter. And it was tangible. We could smell him there. And it wasn't just in my mind because Jolene smelled it too. So our ancestors are with us.
Yes, yes, they are, Sister Toni. What you bringing up, and it falls in the line of what I opened up with the seance. Seance moves through smells too. The spirit do use what we call the senses, the five senses, or they call them the clairs, to communicate with us. But if we just tone it down, mellow out a little bit, we can start picking up these signals and vibes from the ancestors. Sometimes they'll send a smell. Sometimes you can hear a humming sound, or you can hear someone talking. Sometimes you can see a flash, or you can see them in a vision. And so they are still there, and these forms of communications are open to us. But as we continue to move into the ATRs and going through, as Divine Prince read, Hoodoo conjure culture, we'll become more in alignment and aware of our ancestors in these forms of communications.
Yes, and our time has come to an end. And I would like to have Elder Reggie close us out. It's been wonderful being here. I enjoyed this show very much.
Yes, it was a powerful show. Divine Prince come up with some awesome, awesome topics, and I love it. And good to see you, Brother Horn.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Toni. Yeah, and our loved ones in the chat room, we love you dearly. Britt Brat Dash, she was quite busy tonight. I was reading everything you was putting out. We didn't answer, but we still love you nonetheless. So here we go. Lest we forget, the spiritual medicine of voodoo brings healing and relief from the shackles of slavery that binds the master and the slave to the same chain of social division. Yes, I would say with that, we still got to walk this earth together while we are amongst the living. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Good night. Be peace and blessed for everyone.
Ashe,
good night, everyone.
Good night.
We use cow shit to survive. Dried cow poop, picked fresh from the fields, wrapped in cloth, boiled into tea. We added lemon, peppermint, even rabbit tobacco. Why? Because it worked. Colds, congestion, pneumonia, gone. It was antiviral, an immune stimulant. That tea kept folks alive when there were no doctors. Some called it nasty, but our ancestors called it medicine. Real healing came from the dirt, literally. It worked. So that's why cayenne was fire medicine. We used it to warm the blood, move the cold out, and wake the body up. A pinch in tea, a shake in food. It cleared chest, boosted the belly, and broke fevers faster than any store-bought cure.
Allow me to show you something.
They say I'm crazy and that might be true. I got this white in my DNA, yeah, I'm coming for you. It's time we turn the tables, flip these motherfuckers on you. I wanna see you hanging from trees, it's time you pay for your dirt and your showtime. You created the monster, you created the beast. Now all this savagery you just gon' reap. I'm coming home, daddy, to the plantation, and I'm taking the lives of everybody, including the children, on some Nat Turner. Oh, do you hear that sound? It's about to go down. Unleash the beast, we about to tear this motherfucker down. Do you hear that sound? It's about to go down. Unleash the beast, we about to tear this motherfucker down. I met my girl Harriet at the gate. If you wanna know how she doing, yeah, she's straight. But she had one question: when we gon' get up? All that talking tough, yeah, we don't walk it tough. She got it locked and loaded, got that piece up on her side. She looked me in my eyes and said, "Meet you ready to ride?" Moving forward, you gotta use both eyes. Watch your front and watch your back. Keep your hands up on your gas. Do you hear that sound? It's about to go down. Unleash the beast, we about to tear this motherfucker down. Do you hear that sound? It's about to go down. Unleash the beast, we about to tear this motherfucker down. He sit at the table, but he don't order no bacon. He greet me in those words, assalamu alaikum. Got them glasses on his face and them waves in his head. He go by the name of Detroit Red. He looks me in my eye and says, "You only get one try. Know that your biggest opposition will come from the inside. I know you wanna love them all, but don't even try, because they'll smile up in your face while plotting your demise." Do you hear that sound? It's about to go down. Unleash the beast, we about to tear this motherfucker down. Do you hear that sound? It's about to go down. Unleash the beast, we about to tear this motherfucker down.